to discuss more, as we have a wide spread of solutions that's catered to various industries, which we have a large portfolio of customers as well. In Honeywell, we actually view a supply chain solution, or rather any technology solution, in three pillars itself. First pillar is software, and second is the edge service devices, which is the hardware pieces, and the services pieces at the end. So for hardware, as Frans mentioned earlier on, software is one of the key areas to actually help to collate and extract data to provide some insights to provide to the customers and the operations to actually make data-driven decisions. These in part also will be able to help to drive predictive analytics and for you to actually formulate prescriptive analytics, things when happen, what you should do. Software itself will not be complete without hardware. Right. So with hardware, we call it edge services or edge devices, where it can range from vehicle mount computers to handheld computers to sensors to RFID to printers. Essentially, these are the devices, the interface from a virtual software environment to the physical environment, so to speak, and it actually integrates these two environments and provide the insight um, uh, uh, to your operation. And last but not least, the services lifecycle, where you want to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Of course, is to reduce costs in terms of the operations and optimizing your productivity itself, to making sure that nothing breaks down. So it's essential, and especially in cold storage environments, everything's going, and is a very essential part of our supply chain today. As you have seen, this Black Swan event, uh, where essentially it has disrupted a couple of things, but cold chain services has always been the critical lifeblood for our society itself. So it's essential to keep everything going, and you have to view from a technology standpoint these three main pillars to marry these three things together. Now, when we move into mobility, we start talking about how can we help our customers to actually secure and to capture the data that's required. And of course to stretch that dollar. So with that, we actually came up with a unified platform 3 years ago, which is called the Mobility Edge, a unified platform. This platform enables us to actually have a single hardware or single CPU here, as you can see over here, and running in this all the different form factors, as you can see over here on the screen, which is a full touch screen or keypad-based computer, or even a vehicle mount itself. All these devices are actually sharing the same software inside there, and of course, software ecosystem. Now, these, as it is, sorry, but I think that's as technical as I would go to. But what fundamentally it helped our customers is basically making things simple. All right, making things simple and making sure that we minimize the costs and effort to deploy technology for our customers. That actually enhances the ROI for our customers as well, to stretch the dollar, and of course to accelerate time to value for our customers. And so think about it from a perspective of, if you're using a software, and you don't need to actually test out to see if it's running on the various devices that you see on the screen here, because essentially all are the same. And we have tested it with our customers and it works beautifully. So it helps in minimizing the cost and effort and the risk. From the unified platform, we derive four major pillars: accelerating deployments, optimizing your performance, productivity performance, extending the life cycle, and of course, last but not least, a very important one is to strengthen the security itself. Now, the when we talk about in deployment, we always talk about making sure that you deploy fast so that you can go to operation as quickly as possible. You also want to optimize your business performance on a day-to-day basis. Stretching the dollar, extending the life cycle, stretching for 5 to 7 years in terms of total cost of ownership. So that would definitely look at per device or per product that you actually purchase. Is good for your operation and investment. And last but not least is the security part, where essentially all the data is stretching for 5 to 7 years in terms of total cost of ownership. So that would definitely look at per device or per product that you actually purchase. Is good for your operation and investment. And last but not least is the security part, where essentially all the data is stretching for 5 to 7 years in terms of total cost of ownership. So that would definitely look at per device or per product that you actually purchase. Is good for your operation and investment. And last but not least is the security part, where essentially all the data is stretching for 5 to 7 years in terms of total cost of ownership. So that would definitely look at per device or per product that you actually purchase. Is is good for your operation and investment. And last but not least is the security part, where essentially all the data is the world, in fact. So what I'm showing here is basically just some logos that are actually within our region itself. So to give you an inclination of what we are able to provide to the cold chain environment. So moving on, fundamentally for next few slides, I'm going to focus on three main pieces. Streamlining the cold storage and handling, increasing productivity in and accuracy, and reducing downtime, and of course to future-proof your co-operations itself, right? So in the cold chain environment, in negative 30 degrees is a very harsh environment for RF dependent is electronics, as you can see over here. Um, for Wi-Fi infrastructures, you would definitely need heaters to be in there and is insulated in the cold chain environment. So it takes a special care in terms of deploying such technologies in the environment itself. So you need to be very cautious about what you select. But on this topic, let's go through some of the key areas or the problems that would that constantly faced with our customers, and why they chose our solutions to actually overcome them. So first is the frost. Frost exists even in environments where there's winter, right? It obstructs. When frost forms on LCD screens, it obstructs the screen, and it also obstructs the optical ports of scanners. and cause these keys to actually stick. So all these actually increases error rates exponentially, right? It's not subsequently, but it's really exponentially because when your user cannot scan the barcodes, they need to manually enter, and manual entry causes error rates to go up. And if there are keys that stuck, error rates go up even higher. So it's one thing to consider. Frost is one of the things that the first causes of problems. Number two is much more serious problem, which is the condensation in the devices or any of the electronics that reside in the cold storage. These cause similar issues as frost, but internal components start to create some condensation, and it starts to corrode and short circuit and fails. Right, this is even worse than frost. Basically, the device is actually not working anymore. The coal also reduces the ability to have a better battery life or battery levels itself. So as we all know, if you go to winter environments, you see that your battery on your camera or your appliances actually will not be able to um, operate much longer compared to a normal temperature standpoint. And last but not least, the insulation part. In cold storage environment, the insulation actually restricts radio waves, and it actually absorbs the RF signals that's being emitted by all these devices around. That means the same radio wave may be bouncing around, and the same AP is receiving the double signal itself. So it actually creates a very um, uh, messy environment in there, which has to be taken care of. So essentially, in short, it is a harsh environment for electronics. So when you're evaluating a solution, um, one of the things that actually would look into is basically how to overcome those factors. So first thing first, you have to ask is, do these devices have heaters in there? Uh, First thing first, we need to prevent is condensation inside all these devices. These devices are equipped with heaters on the screen and internal heaters where essentially it will be able to automatically switch on, detect the temperature drop, and switch on. And in fact, from a minus 30 degrees to a normal temperature outside, that the huge change of temperature shift, condensation happens very very fast. As we have seen also when we're going into a mall that's cold and we're moving out of the mall, you can see your glasses frost up, right? So condensation starts to appear almost
Inside a ship,
immediately. So heaters are very important to make
people
sure
can
that
watch.
all these devices are protected from start. Housing in a cold
Inside of here,
environment,
you've got
things become
everything to
more
do live
brittle.
streaming. And for you guys
So
who have
these
churches or
devices are really need
ministries
to
or
be more rugged,
groups that do live
more
streaming
durable.
regularly or weekly,
So
and you want to
essentially,
have it embedded in
it's
your
it's
actual
it's to
page,
make
this
sure
is
that
going to be very
there's no
helpful to
breakage
you.
in the cold
You
storage.
just
And
go
in fact,
into,
we all
again,
know that
your Creator
it's more breathable
Studio.
environment
You
and
click
higher
your
IP ceiling to
live
prevent
stream button over the
moisture and
side. If it's
condensation.
not enabled, you need to enable
Batteries are
it, which is
specially
something you'll have to do
designed,
through the
low
dashboard.
impedance
If it is enabled, like it is mine, and you've
lithium
already been
ion
doing it,
batteries to release the
rather than have
charge
people
at
pop out of your website, you can
colder
have them
temperatures.
embed
So
by doing
that
this
would
simple
mean
thing right
the
here.
devices are
Scroll
able
down
to
to the bottom.
actually operate much longer period of time
You just go
compared to
into,
a
again,
normal battery
your
itself.
Creator Studio. You
Connectors
click your live stream
needs to
button
be
over the
stronger
side.
in
If
terms
it's
and
not
place
enabled, you need
to
to
make sure that
enable
they
it,
don't come
which is something
detached
you'll have to do
in
through
environment
the
moving around. And
dashboard.
of course,
If it is
more
enabled, like it
importantly,
is mine, and you've already been
the
doing it,
ergonomics. So
rather
every
than have people pop out
device
of your
that
website, you
are
can have them
meant for
embed
Yeah
cold
by doing
guys,
storage
this
are
simple
I
thing
meant
just
right
want
here.
to
to
show
be
you
glove
one
Scroll to the
friendly.
update
bottom.
in
So that
YouTube
is one of the most
that
important
live chat is
characteristics
no more
because our
longer
users, as you can
visible
see
here in the screen. You
on this
can see
picture
this.
here, are all wearing gloves, and
Uh,
your
you
users
can
wearing
see
gloves there.
that
So
here live
these are
chat
the
is in.
multiple factors that affects productivity. And you have to address all these when you're looking at some of the technologies out there. So what are the alternatives? As mentioned earlier on, RFID is one of the alternatives to handheld devices as well. You can set up RFID gantries and zones to actually automatically
Here live chat is in.
factors that affects productivity. And you have to address all these when you're looking at some of the technologies out there. So what are the alternatives? As mentioned earlier on, identify case RFID is one of or barcode readers also. So this is the option instead of if you're using a barcode system and you're facing these issues, RFID is the other option that you can actually take a look and obviously to evaluate as well. Voice directed systems is also core to our cold storage offering, which essentially these terminals interface with WMS systems are actually system directed. Users are listening to instructions to actually operate, and hands-free, eyes-free, operating the forklift and interfacing with the computers uh, through only voice. And the best part is everything is under the code. So it's that typically you face with the traditional technologies that you saw earlier on. So in all, this is a cold chain offering on our portfolio where essentially has a wide range. As I mentioned, we have a very strong install base in the cold storage environment. So essentially, you have multiple options that to consider from handy terminals or scan RF guns to forklift vehicle mounts to RFID and even voice itself. So all these devices are very important from a holistic standpoint, but how do you manage these, right? So this is where we start talking about a platform that's able to actually monitor and provide yourself and your operations the operational insights to what's going on in the field. So one of the things that this operational intelligence platform does is essentially extract all the data points and provide data points for you to analyze your environment. For example, drop detection. You'll be able to find hazardous environments when you can identify multiple drops detection in specific areas. You're also able to actually analyze how the batteries has been used and how many is to be charged. And of course, printers, you'll be able to find out, which are the print heads that needs to be changed in the next 3 to 6 months. So it it provides you a sort of a predictive ability to make sure that you don't face any issues moving forward and keeping the operations going, right? So all in all, it is a platform that enables to move to the next level, which essentially is what we call the mobility edge artificial intelligence, providing algorithms and models sensor data from both the devices and sensors. I think there was a question in the Q&A. We will address it later on, but sensors actually provide data loggers provide specific data points and enable us to actually collate everything on the one single platform to provide an insight for you. And applying machine learning, we're able to address multiple areas that our customers have been trying to resolve. Essentially, these are the examples right now that has been used in our customers' environment. And within a warehouse environment, we are able to actually decode obstructed barcodes because the system has learned that this barcodes has been read multiple times, and with that the user does not know that the barcode has been obstructed and it still can scan. So to the user it's normal to scan, but at the back end the system has already recognized that this is your default barcode you've been scanning, and it actually reconstructs the barcode back. um, we are also able to actually detect device abuse and recognize items, basically scanning a item and taking an image of this and verifying whether or not this label is on the correct item itself. So it's in multiple times some items are labeled differently or incorrectly labeled. So this enables our customers to actually recognize that and start to correct the mistakes accordingly. So mislabels is one of the areas that they face. So multiple use cases when we talk about mobility, HD, AI, field mobility and retail has been using as well as I mentioned earlier on. For example, the reconstruction of barcodes. In this case, for field mobility, when moving around, it will reconstruct the barcode if the barcode is actually broken, right? So essentially, from a start, operational intelligence enables our customers to address multiple areas. But in this response of the health crisis response, we have also included multiple things to consider. So asset check-ins, checkouts, cleaning alerts. So with this platform running, the user is able to actually clog in and clog out the specific areas within the environment. So you can actually do a count of people. So making sure that you comply to safe distancing in your premises, social distancing proximity alerts, cleaning alerts for the users to make sure that they periodically clean them and making sure that they are disinfected correctly. And of course, last but not least, with all these, very importantly, communications. We never forget about communications in the operations, and you are able to actually extend the connectivity via voice in communicating with each other in a warehouse to our operations. Essentially, through push to talk, we have the ability to connect to legacy PABX systems, and of course to provide push to talk to one to many and many to many kind of environment. You can create groups, uh, drivers, warehouse maintenance, and you can start to just to click on it and communicate straight out to the group of users that's using the solution. So it's very neat and very simplified way of actually communicating, and it's all in secured form. So we have a lot of technologies that's again mentioned, meant for our customers, especially the cold storage environment. We are the leaders in this space, as you saw. So if you have any questions in relation to in more detail, specifically for our technologies, do reach out to our local reps in Philippines, listed here, Brad and Michelle. They'll be glad to assist you with more details if you require more. But I think there are some questions in the Q&A. We'll address them in the later part of the session today. So if you have any questions in relation to
Okay, so
in more
thank you,
detail,
Sir Freddy, for that
specifically
profound
for our
and
technologies,
interesting
do reach out to our
presentation.
local
Thank
reps
you
in
for
Philippines,
explaining the
listed
different
here.
factors
Brad
or
and
challenges
Michelle,
that we must keep in
they'll
mind
be
when it
they'll
comes
be
to
glad
cold
to
chain
assist you with
operations,
more details
as well as the
in
available
more. But I think there are some
technologies,
questions in the
particularly for
Q&A.
the
We'll
cold
address
chain
them
environment.
in the later
Some
part
of
of
the
the session.
technologies discussed were the RFID, the voice directed technology, and I actually understand that each technology has its own benefits, its unique capabilities, particular advantages, and what I really hope this is that our participants was able to find out or bump into a certain solution that they think that can possibly help them. So if you have something in mind, guys, please share it with us in the Q&A portion. We will answer those after all the presentations. All right. So now in the next 20 minutes, we will learn about feeding the future, emerging food supply chain scenarios, straight from a cold chain expert. He is the founding president of the Cold Chain Association of the Philippines, organized in 2002 under the auspice and with the support of the Foreign Agricultural Service, USDA. He is also the president of Cold Store Center Philippines Incorporated, a third-party logistics company offering refrigerated and ambient warehousing facilities and complete distribution services to food processing and importing companies. Moreover, he is the president of Ideamorphosis Incorporated, operator of a fleet of eutectic refrigeration trucks, and supplier of eutectic equipment and other cold chain accessories. With the credibility of over 40 years career experience in Philippines steel manufacturing industry, concurrently he is involved in policy formulation and strategic planning activities for steel industry development. With great cheers, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Anthony Dizon. Good morning, Sir Anthony, and welcome.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the kind introduction. Uh, my greetings to the first two speakers that came before. Uh, my presentation will dwell on emerging food supply concerns in the Philippines in the environment that we are now facing and post-COVID. Let me just uh, start by saying that the past 3 months will probably go down in our personal history files as an unprecedented event that will leave indelible memories, either because we are still recovering from a serious case of cabin fever, where the only cure is fulfilling your social calendar, scrambling to reorganize your business operations from the effects of the lockdown, or worse, you or somebody you know may have actually been afflicted with a COVID virus. Be that as it may, as we look forward to embracing the new normal, we need to come to grips with the different emerging scenarios to enable us to retrofit, adjust, and adapt as needed for our businesses to sail in strange waters. My presentation will focus on emerging food supply chain concerns in the Philippines, viewed from different perspectives, namely supply, distribution, and consumption, and will volunteer observations that hopefully will set our recovery strategy in the right direction. We will start off with the supply dimension. Uh, we we have information that the local food producers, the poultry and livestock raisers, may have adjusted their loading cycles in the light of ASF, avian flu, and COVID, thereby distorting the food supply balance. I think most of us remember that in the past weeks, in the height of COVID, there was a supposed uh, over overflow of inventory in cold storage facilities. We are happy to report that that situation has since been corrected and that the occupancy levels in cold storage facilities are now slowly coming back to normal. So the new concern that we are facing is now the possibility that there may not be enough production that can support the volumes that are needed to maintain the food supply balance. There is also information that suggests that some food processing companies are planning to organize manufacturing operations in Mindanao to sidestep the ASF situation in Luzon. Uh, we are mentioning this because this may represent investment opportunities for the cold chain industry to make new investments in infrastructure in Mindanao to support the move to establish food processing operations in the area. Third, uh, imports of raw materials may be disrupted due to closures of processing plants in source countries. I'm sure that most of us have already read the news articles that advise that processing plants in the United States and in other countries have also shut down because of the effect of the COVID virus in these countries. And therefore, to the extent that the Philippines is dependent on imports of raw materials for food production, we may have to adjust our import schedules to conform with these phenomena. Likewise, the fact that the whole world is also recovering at this point from the COVID pandemic, the demand, there may be a spike spike for imports of raw materials from different source countries, and the ratio of supply versus demand may actually push prices and availabilities to the limits, which could in turn have a corresponding effect on finished goods prices in the Philippines. Uh, we do know that a good amount of raw material inputs for food manufacturing needs to be imported, and the development could actually have a spiraling effect on finished goods prices that are locally manufactured in the Philippines using imported raw materials. And then the last item on supply, there are forthcoming increases in tariffs on certain raw material inputs, an example of which is mechanically deboned meat, which is a basic raw material for the production of processed meat products. And therefore, any increase in tariffs will also impact on prices of the finished product. On the distribution side, we are concerned that with the relaxation of quarantine restrictions, there could be a rush to replenish inventory levels in stores. And this may exert undue pressure on the warehousing and transport sectors to cope with the new demand levels. Similarly, the resumption of dine-in arrangements in Horeca accounts may also contribute to the replenishment pressure. I had a recent conversation with representatives of the hotel and restaurant sector, and they are quite optimistic that the business environment should revert to normal at the earliest possible opportunity, given that people are eager to go back and refill their social calendars. As a result, in anticipation of this development, we say that there may be a need to reformat transport logistics operations to improve distribution efficiency and to conform to social distancing requirements. What do we say? What do we mean here? Um, we, from experience, we noticed that there are trips that we need to undertake where the payload of trucks are actually way below capacities, and there may be a need to arrive at an agreement between logistics operators and food manufacturer principals to allow for mixed cargo to improve on the payload and to optimize vehicle volumes. On the consumption side, we are also concerned that realignment of personal budgets resulting from social distancing, which may lead to higher costs on other items, may also affect the food budgets of the consumer, of the average consumer in the Philippines. And then we also have noticed that there have been uh, uh, job losses in OFWs in the to the tune of about we expect that there should be about 2 million returnees from of OFWs who have lost their jobs abroad, and therefore there should be a significant decrease in the inward remittances from these OFWs. Also, lifestyle recovery may be dampened because a good number of people had to suffer a period of no income, necessitating recovery of lost savings during the pandemic period. Also, consumer spending, particularly in eating out, may be affected by budget priorities. Uh, Examples of which are rental payments that were accumulated over the past 3 months, utility bills, and so on and so forth. So, having said all those, what can we do as an industry, or what can we suggest as an industry to hasten the recovery and assure that there will be no serious uh, deviations from the normal allocation for food supply. So we have a list of suggested action plans that we think may help government and the industry in planning for the future. Number one, there will obviously be a need for livelihood development to compensate for the loss of jobs locally and for OFWs who were forced to repatriate. Obviously, job creation will not be readily doable. Small businesses could actually be the order of the day. We also need to provide necessary mechanisms to support the livelihood aspect of the Balik Provincia movement. Uh, this program has been put on hold temporarily because precisely of the fact that there could be a disconnect between people wanting to come home and not being able to develop a livelihood when they get back to the province. Third, there may also be a need to revisit our agricultural land usage to optimize productivity and address the nutritional needs of the general citizenry. We may actually need to review our crop assortment and educate consumers to shift to more readily available products. Classic example here that we have been using is the possibility that Filipinos may be trained to be less dependent on rice and have other products to substitute as a staple. Next, there is a need for government to propagate the use of mid-level technologies for value creation and waste minimization, and to provide developmental financing access to private sector micro enterprises. What do we mean here? Uh, we have seen emerging opportunities in mid-level technology farming and other agricultural activities like aquaponics, urban gardening, and so on. That may be a way to mitigate uh, the job the job generation problem. There are also some programs that have been initiated by government. An example of this is the Small Business Corporation of DTI, which aims to provide small loans to micro enterprises to get them started in doing business. There is also the Setup program of the Department of Science and Technology that enables small businesses to avail of technologies and financing to start off on entrepreneurship. Next, there is a need to structure our agricultural communities into organized cooperatives that will qualify for supply linkages to big business. We are saying that this is an emulation of models that are available in other countries in the area. Classic example of which would be Taiwan, where small businesses cluster together and combine their capabilities to be able to supply big business uh, as supply contractors. Lastly, there's, there is a need for government to coordinate with private sector groups for the rationalization of operations of existing food supply chain facilities and construction of additional infrastructure to support the food security program. Part of this is the attempt to revive government-owned facilities that are currently idle. We are suggesting that with the assistance of the private sector, we may be able to make these facilities operational again and play an important role in the food sufficiency program. In conclusion, there is no doubt that the emerging scenarios invite more questions than provide answers. The stakeholders in the Philippine food supply chain network need to do a very dynamic balancing act as part of the adjustments to the new normal, given that different sectors espouse different outlooks in the near to medium term. For its part, the Cold Chain Association of the Philippines is participating actively in the effort to develop baseline information that could serve as guides for strategic and operations planning for its members. CCAP is now an active member of the Interagency Task Force Subtask Group on Food Value Chain and Logistics, jointly chaired by the Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Agriculture, the primary objective of which is to ensure food sufficiency and food safety in these critical times. For the medium term, CCAP is also working with the Board of Investments in crafting the cold chain industry roadmap, which aspires to identify areas for development and investment in cold chain infrastructure to support the food security program. With these ongoing activities, we are hopeful that our journey towards normalcy will culminate sooner rather than later. On that note, we will end our presentation and we will be happy to entertain questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Anthony. Thank you for that informative and eye opening presentation. I must say that it is always a great experience to be kept abreast of the status quo, particularly, sir, on those supply chain scenarios which you identified as supply, distribution, and consumption. But what's most important is the action plan that actually Sir Anthony presented. Some of those are livelihood development, revisit the agricultural land usage, and of course, the support which are most importantly the government should provide to the agricultural technologies. So, okay, we're done with all the presentations. Again, thank you to all our speakers. So far, we have been learning a lot. I'm starting to see questions. Um, some are asking if we can send the presentation decks after the webinar. Yes, we will provide you with the link wherein you can download the presentations along with the feedback form, which we encourage you to answer. All right, so let's start with the questions. First one is, okay, will Honeywell be involved in 5G for cold chain monitoring SCADA systems? I think this one goes for Mr. Freddy.
Yeah. So we are actually developing, as mentioned earlier on in presentation, we are investing in such technologies. So it will be on our platforms to actually allow you to have some insights, the operational intelligence piece. So yes, we are actually involved in investing in these areas. So we are actually
Okay,
developing, as
so
mentioned
thank you,
earlier
Sir
on
Freddy.
in
I hope,
presentation,
Sir
we are
Bernardo, we were able to answer
investing
your
in such
question.
technologies.
Okay, this
So it will
the
be on
next
our platforms to
part
actually allow
is not
you to have
actually a
some
question, but
insights, the operational
I just wanted to
intelligence
hear the opinion
piece.
of our
So yes, we
speakers.
are actually
It's from
involved in
Mr. Emmanuel Arcilia. Hello to you, sir. Due to pandemics and animal fresh produced diseases, I think there is a strong possibility that food manufacturers will prefer to have their own storage to eliminate or minimize cross contamination with other products in a commercial cold storage and presence of many employees and truckers. So, any thoughts on this, Sir Franz? Or let's have it first from Mr. Anthony, Anthony Dizon.
Yes, thank you
Anthony,
for
what do
that.
you think about this, sir?
Thank you for the question. Actually, the question came from one of our members, and
Mhm.
while we can agree with the concept per se, we feel that it may not be advisable to suggest that food manufacturers operate their own respective cold storage facilities because number one, there may not be sufficient economies of scale for individual operators to construct their own cold storage facilities, and therefore that the economies of scale can be provided by professional service providers who operate cold storage logistics companies. Uh, the cross contamination concern is adequately addressed in compliance with the regulatory policies of the affiliate agencies of the Department of Agriculture, which ensure that there will be no commingling of commodities that may have contamination effects on each other.
Okay. Any additional thoughts on this, Sir Franz?
I think to optimize best practices and to be able to use technology, as we discussed in the presentation, the startup and investment for cold storage are quite high. So I believe for a manufacturer to open up
Any
their own
additional thoughts
facility,
on this, Sir Franz?
you would have to have quite a lot of scale to do that. Then, of course, using best practices and investment in technology, I believe that altogether will be quite a significant challenge for a single manufacturer to implement.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Sir Franz and Mr. Anthony. How about you, Sir Freddy? Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think I'm aligned with friends also
Mm-hmm.
related to that. The investment cost involved in technology is quite hefty, so it's not easy for smaller players to actually deploy such
All right. Thank you, Sir
singular
Franz and Mr.
capacity.
Anthony. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sir Freddy. Now let's move on to our next question from an anonymous attendee. As investors and advocates of sustainable seafood, how can we tap potential opportunities in the supply chain for seafoods and potentially address the challenges in the industry?
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Freddy.
Have you
Now let's move
identified
on to our
gaps and
next question
opportunities
from
that
an
we can
anonymous
look
attendee.
into? Are there
As
proponents
investors
for
and
these
advocates of
opportunities?
sustainable seafood,
Mr. Anthony
how can
Dizon,
we
can we
tap
start with you,
potential
sir?
opportunities in the
No, that
supply
is a
chain
very
for
good
seafoods and
question. I
potentially
do not
address
have a
the
ready
challenges
answer
in the
today,
industry?
but this is one of the
Have you
uh,
identified gaps
specific
and
concerns
opportunities that
that
we can
is
look
being
into?
addressed
Are there
by the
proponents for these
subtask group
opportunities?
of the IATF
Mr. Anthony Dizon, can
on
we
food
start with
security,
you,
on
sir?
food value chain and logistics. Precisely for this purpose, there is now an effort to generate two items. Number one is
Mm-hmm.
inventory of all warehousing facilities around the country, uh, putting them in a cold storage warehouse registry so that we may be able to determine their capacities and their capabilities, and so that we will be able to determine if there are gaps in the needs that need to be addressed. There is also a paper that is being submitted by Picard, which is a semi-government organization also aiming to identify gaps in capacities and capabilities and needs analysis so that we can move forward with a program to support the different industry sectors that need assistance. In the case of seafood, the Cochin Association of the Philippines has been looking at this industry both from the point of view of capture fishing and aquaculture. And we are now undertaking the initial steps towards recognizing the demand and putting in place a program to set up the support facilities that might be needed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sir Anthony, thank you for the comprehensive answer. It's actually good to hear that. How about you, Sir Franz? Is there any addition on what Sir Anthony has said?
I think in addition to what Sir Anthony has said, of course, sustainable seafood,
Sir
if you look
Anthony, thank you
at
for
the
the
whole footprint
comprehensive
with regards
answer.
to
It's
logistics and the
actually good
focus on
to hear
reducing
that.
carbon
How
footprint
about you,
as
Sir
part of
Franz? Is
supply
there
chain
any
or green
addition
logistics,
on what Sir
there
Anthony
are a
has
lot of
said?
opportunities. Think of optimizing the warehouse processes and temperature logging so there's less wastage of food, as of course this leads to a more sustainable seafood supply chain. Also,
Mm-hmm.
as part of reuse of packaging materials, the use of biofuels in trucks. This all leads to, say, improvements in the carbon footprint of the supply chain part, which overall leads to a sustainable supply chain, whether it's seafood or other food products.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Sir Franz. Additional thoughts, Sir Freddy?
Yeah, so my thoughts are actually in reference to not specifically for seafood, but in general the supply chain
All
uh,
right.
for perishable goods. Essentially, example in Singapore, we have actually faced one of the critical cases where recently we our suppliers have actually to discard 250,000 eggs, mainly because it's oversupply, and of course there are some the quality of the eggs is not there. So that comes to address a few things. The ability to actually be agile. Obviously, a black swan event like this, nobody is able to be agile to actually adapt to the demand. But it's more of the visibility of the whole value chain, and of course to create a traceability perspective, to reduce any wastage of food along the value chain itself. So in short, that's the reason why Honeywell has been very focused in terms of addressing multiple areas of data points and trying to give a very holistic view of it all, because there are a lot of data points to consider: temperature, even weather that we can speak about, meshing everything together, giving you a certain insight whether or not a typhoon is forecasted for this month is going to impact the food supply for seafood. That could be an indication. So there are opportunities in addressing these, but we have to get everyone on the same page, which is basically embracing technology and enabling our operations to have the ability to be more adaptable and future proof.
All right. Thank you, Sir Freddy. I hope we were able to answer your question, mom or sir, from the different perspectives of our speakers. Now we will just entertain one more question because as much as we wanted to answer all, we're quite running out of time. Um, this one is for Sir Tony from Mr. Ramil Bacalangco. Hi to you, sir. What's the future for cold chain distribution now that we are limited on inter-island transportation? So let's start with Sir Anthony because it's referred to you, sir. Sir
Okay,
Anthony.
okay. Thank you for the question, Ramil. But I am a bit confused with the question because I do not know. I'm not aware that there is a restriction on inter-island transportation. As a matter of fact, the cold chain industry has been classified as among the essential food sectors, and therefore we have been granted the privilege of unhampered distribution nationwide. If there are any restrictions that you may have encountered in your operations, it may be because of the restrictions that are imposed by local government units, which are not consistent with the national policy. And in instances like this, we do have a link to IATF and the DTI to be able to address and resolve issues that may be presented individually by local government units. But as a general statement, there is no restriction on inter-island transportation.
Thank you for that information, Sir Anthony. Um, Sir Franz, what do you think about this question?
To be able to address and
Mm,
resolve issues that may be presented individually by local
to be
government
honest, I
units.
don't
But
know
as a
enough
general
about
statement,
the
there is
local
no
situation
restriction on
to
inter-island
comment on.
Mhm.
transportation.
All right, okay.
I really cannot comment on this topic.
Okay, so we understand. How about you, Sir Freddy? Do you
Yeah,
have
same
any
here.
additional thoughts?
Yeah, this a more more of a local context, so don't have much
Okay.
To be
comment.
honest, I
Yeah.
don't know enough
No worries.
about the
Probably we
local
can
situation
get a
to
more
comment on.
general question for the participants.
I
How do
really
you
cannot
think the
comment on
cold
this
chain
topic.
industry will be able to prepare for the future? Let's start with Sir Franz.
This more more of a local context.
I think, as I alluded in my presentation, investment in technologies, keep on investing in education to be able to have skilled workers and to be able to upskill existing workers, and of
Mhm.
further investment in food safety and regulations, and organizing international collaboration through associations like the Cold Chain Association. That will be key
Mhm.
to the success of the future cold chain.
Thank you, Sir Franz. Sir Freddy?
Yeah, same approach as well. And I think the health crisis event had actually made us to realize the importance of enabling ourselves with technology, and giving us the edge to actually be adaptable. So I think there's a time to start looking into how we actually be able to be deploying all these technologies moving forward. And as
Mhm.
Franz mentioned, also it's important to actually interface with associations as well. This has been a very good interface with the associations where they provide more insights in terms of the environment that our customers are actually operating in.
Mhm. Thank you for those insights, Sir Freddy. From the side of the local counterpart, Sir Anthony, do you have any thoughts in this one?
Well, yes, I agree with the two other gentlemen on the need and the opportunities that lie with utilizing, accepting and utilizing new technologies.
Mhm.
We have to accept that technology is the wave of the future, and therefore, uh, what we are able to adapt in the Philippine context will always be a useful move forward. Uh, I also need to emphasize, however, that number one, the good news is that the technology is accessible. It is available to the Philippine investors who may want to avail to the level of technology that they wish to attain, depending on the investment appetite and the need that is identified in the market. But we also need to qualify that there are circumstances in the local scene in the Philippines that may need to be specifically addressed, and that is therefore a situation that may need to be taken separate from operations technology and other technologies that may be available for the cold chain industry. An example here could be no matter what technology you apply, if you get stuck in traffic, technology won't be able to help you much.
Mhm. I totally agree with you, Sir Anthony. As far as I understand, the only way that we can move forward in this new normal is to start embracing digitization. So again, thank you so much to all our speakers. Thank you for the thoughts that you've given to our participants' questions. As much as we wanted to answer all the questions, we will try to individually answer those after the webinar. And now it's time to end our event. On behalf of the organizers, AEB, Honeywell, and Prime Sales, and also CCAP, thank you for the attention and support you all guys gave in this event. We hope that we were able to impart valuable insights that will contribute to your action plans. And by the way, we encourage everyone to please share us your thoughts via the feedback forms that we will email you shortly. So if you have current projects or future projects that you believe we could help you can always send us an email or call us and we will start from there. So I look forward to seeing you all in our upcoming activities. Let's stay connected and stay safe. This is Amy Buenaflor, your host, signing off. Have a blessed day. Thank you, everyone. You can always send us an email or call us and we will start from there. So I look forward to seeing you all in
Yeah,
our
it's
upcoming
a more
activities.
more of a
Let's
local
stay connected
context,
and stay
so
safe.
don't have much
Okay.
comment. Yeah.
No worries. Probably we can get a more general question for the participants. How do you think the cold chain industry will be able to prepare for the future? Let's start with Sir Franz.